I've always hated driving long highways at night. There's something about the way the road stretches on forever, swallowed by darkness on both sides, that makes you feel like you're drifting through nowhere. The white lines blur, the hum of the tires feels almost hypnotic, and before long you forget where you are, or if you're even moving at all. That night, fog rolled over the asphalt in soft waves, glowing faintly beneath the headlights. The air was thick, almost alive, pressing against the windshield as if trying to get inside. My radio hissed with static, even though it was off. That's when I noticed the silence. No other cars, no insects, not even the wind. Just me and that endless stretch of road. Then far ahead, I saw a light. It wasn't a car's headlights. It wasn't a sign. It hovered, too bright, too steady, pulsing faintly as if it were breathing with me. My foot eased off the gas, my chest tightened, and for a moment I thought about turning around. But the light grew larger, closer, brighter, and that's when I realized I wasn't the only one on the highway that night. That's when I saw it. It was late. The sky had that hollow gray of early winter, the kind that presses down on the road. The highway stretched ahead, empty. I hadn't seen another car in what felt like hours. My tires whispered over cracked asphalt. Mile markers passed, or at least, they should have. They didn't. Each time I blinked, the numbers seemed to reset. Gas stations vanished the same way. One moment, a pump sat under a dim light. I slowed, squinting, and it was gone. Just darkness. The GPS flickered, freezing on a blank screen. North, south, same stretch of road. The fog rolled in low, brushing against the car like damp fingers. I could hear my own breath echo, uneven, tight. Something in the silence pressed against me, soft, persistent. I thought I saw movement at the edge of the fog. Trees bending, maybe? Or someone standing? I blinked. Nothing. Just the road ahead, stretching longer than it should. I tried to drive faster, faster enough to outrun the unease. But the scenery? It didn't change. The asphalt wound endlessly, mile after invisible mile. Radio static came and went, faint whispers almost carrying my name. I turned it off. Silence. Nothing. Even that felt heavy. Like waiting underwater for a signal that would never come. The headlights in front of me, I could have sworn there were none, reflected in the wet asphalt. But there were no other cars. Just the highway, empty, endless. I reached for the visor mirror. My face stared back, pale under the dim cabin light. The eyes were tired, but there was something else. A pull, like the road itself was watching, waiting. I tried to count the miles. 1, 2, 3. Numbers lost meaning. Each marker seemed farther than the last, or closer than it should have been. I remembered exits from the map, places to rest, lights to follow. They didn't exist anymore. The roadside trees merged into shadows, motionless, silent. I felt the wheel tremble under my hands. Not from the car. From the road. The asphalt hummed faintly, a low vibration in my chest. The air inside the car grew thick. I rolled the window down. Cold air rushed in. It smelled like metal and wet leaves, like a place left alone for years. I thought I heard footsteps behind me. Not on the asphalt, inside the fog. Soft, cautious. Measuring my pace, I wanted to stop, but stopping felt dangerous. The air seemed to lean toward me, closer, heavier. I blinked. The sky was darker. Stars hidden behind clouds I hadn't noticed before. The road was longer than it could be. I slowed anyway. Tires whispering. Wind pressing against the car. Nothing. No lights. No sounds. Nothing except my own heartbeat. Every shadow seemed to twitch at the corner of my vision. I reached for the radio again. Static. A faint voice, too soft to understand. I shut it off. The mile markers flickered in the headlights. They were numbers, yes, but wrong. Backward. Counting down. I drove past them, each one smaller than it should have been, burning faintly into the asphalt. At 0, I saw something move beside the road. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The highway went on, and I was alone. Alone, with nothing to mark the time or distance. Alone, with only the empty miles stretching ahead. It was just past midnight. The air smelled of cold asphalt and distant rain. The highway stretched ahead, straight and unbroken. I noticed them first in the rearview mirror. Two headlights faint at first, blinking through the darkness. I slowed. They kept pace. I sped. They followed. No matter what I did, they never got closer. Not faster. Not slower. Always behind. There was no other car on this stretch. No buildings. No exits. Just me and them. The fog thickened. Each breath smelled damp and metallic. Wind pushed against the car, soft but insistent. I kept looking in the mirrors. The lights stayed. I tried blinking. Just a trick of the eyes, I told myself. But the shape, the symmetry of the beams, it felt deliberate, patient, watching. I passed mile markers, numbers flickering under my headlights. Nothing. No other vehicles. The lights kept coming, unwavering. I gripped the wheel tighter. The car hummed under me. Tires rolling, engine steady. The lights matched every speed, every move. I wanted to look away. The mirror reflected the road, the sky, the faint glow of headlights. But I couldn't stop staring. Something inside told me to watch. Time blurred. Minutes, hours, impossible to tell. I passed exits I should have remembered, gas stations that weren't there. And still, those headlights, behind me, patient, silent. I whispered my own name. Nothing answered except the faint hum of the tires. The road seemed to stretch forever. Then I stopped. Just like that. Heart pounding. Car still. The headlights vanished. The fog remained, thick, curling around the asphalt. No one behind me. No trace of what had been following. I sat. Engine idling. The air smelled damp. Every shadow around the car felt too close. I wanted to keep driving, but part of me knew some roads are endless, and some lights never leave. I turned back slowly. Nothing. Just the dark highway, stretching and silent. The hum of my car filled the emptiness. The fog clung to the edges of vision. And for a long while, I thought about the headlights. They had never been just lights. Not really. They had been something waiting, something patient. And maybe, still behind me somewhere in the night, it was late. The highway curved under a pale, empty moon. I spotted the exit sign in the distance. Faded white leaning slightly, I turned. The ramp felt narrower than it should. Asphalt pressed tight beneath the tires. The radio flickered, static washing over the cabin. A faint voice whispered, almost my own. My name. I shook it off. Probably interference. The exit ended. Back on the same highway. Same markers, same fog, same emptiness. I checked the GPS. Frozen. Staring blankly, static hummed through the speakers. Low at first, then rising. Faint whispers overlapped. I recognized my own thoughts. Repeated aloud. The air inside the car felt thick, almost alive. I rolled the window down. Cold pressed in. Metallic, damp. I glanced into the fog. Shadows twisted at the edges of light. Nothing solid, but the feeling of being watched crawled along my spine. I tried driving. The exit had led nowhere. The road ahead looped, endless, and the static whispered again. I wanted to stop, but hesitation felt dangerous. Even the silence held weight. The headlights ahead, none existed. The exit sign faded behind me, and the whispers grew. I realized the voice was telling me things I hadn't yet thought. The air smelled of rain, cold and iron. The wheel vibrated faintly under my hands. The fog pressed closer. I drove faster, trying to leave the sound behind, but the road twisted in impossible ways. Every ramp led back to the same stretch. I closed my eyes briefly. When I opened them, the exit sign was gone. Only the same highway remained. Static hummed softly. Whispers followed, stretching and fading. I understood then. Some paths aren't meant to end. They only lead deeper. It was quiet, save for the tires whispering over asphalt. The night pressed against the windows, soft and heavy. I felt it first in the passenger seat. A subtle shift. The weight of someone moving. I glanced quickly. Empty. Just the seat, pale in the dim glow of the dashboard. The reflection in the window caught my eye. A figure stared back, pale, hollow-eyed. I blinked. Gone. Only my own face reflected back. Yet the seat creaked again. The fog outside rolled low, brushing against the car. Wind hummed faintly along the door edges. Every shadow in the cabin seemed to stretch, reach. The air smelled faintly of wet leaves, something else. Iron, perhaps. I kept driving, tried to ignore it, but the feeling persisted. Watching, waiting. The mirror reflected shapes that shouldn't exist. A flicker of movement behind me, though no one was there. I touched the seat. Empty. The hum of the engine seemed louder than it should. The car, alive with unseen eyes. Every mile felt like an hour. Every blink brought the shadow closer, though it remained unseen. I realized then. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was simply present. Breathing alongside me, I didn't turn around. I didn't look again. But I could feel it there. The fog was thicker than usual, curling around the tires. Ahead, a soft glow appeared. A gas station. Perfectly clean, empty. Lights hummed softly. Pumps clicked, waiting. No attendant. No movement. Only warmth and silence. I stepped inside. The tiles gleamed under dim fluorescent bulbs. Coffee machines steamed, though no one poured. I filled the tank. The click of the pump echoed unnaturally loud. When I left, 10 miles down the road, the same station appeared again. I slowed, looked again. Lights humming. Pumps waiting, empty. The fog wrapped around the building, cold and wet. Wind whispered faintly through the cracked windows. I tried to leave. Tires whispered over asphalt. The glow followed, lingering on the horizon. I realized then, some places exist only to be seen, never reached. The fog was thick that night, curling low along the asphalt, pressing against the tires like cold fingers. The highway stretched ahead, straight and endless. The kind of road that made you feel suspended, as if floating between the world and nothing. I was driving slowly, cautiously, my headlights cutting through the haze in uneven beams. Then, I saw it. Something moved across the road. Not an animal, not a person. It glided. Limbs too long, movements too fluid, impossibly smooth. The fog wrapped around it like smoke, but it didn't hide. It lingered, patient. I froze. The car hummed beneath me, tires whispering over wet asphalt. My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles pale in the dashboard light. A breath caught in my chest, quick and shallow. The figure turned its head toward me. It should have been dark. No face visible. But I felt its gaze cold and deliberate, brushing against my thoughts. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. The wind pressed soft and damp against the windows. It smelled like metal and wet leaves, sharp and heavy. Every sound, the distant hum of a power line, the faint rustle of fog, felt magnified, amplified. I tried to drive past. The tires whispered against the asphalt, the engine low and steady. The figure matched me. Not quickly, not slowly, perfectly. Every blink, every inch I moved, it stayed just beyond the light. Shadows curled at the edges of my vision. The trees leaned in, motionless, yet somehow watching. The highway seemed narrower, the fog heavier, as if compressing around me. I told myself it was my imagination. But the movement was too precise, too fluid. And the feeling of being followed was alive. Time stretched. Minutes became hours, or maybe seconds. Every mile felt like an eternity. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum inside the car. Then it stopped, or at least I thought it had. I blinked. Nothing. Only the faint mist curling over the asphalt, shimmering in my headlights. The tires hummed softly. The engine droned, and yet I felt it lingering. A presence, patient, waiting, just beyond the edges of the light. The fog pressed closer, heavier, carrying whispers I couldn't understand. A faint metallic tang filled the cabin, sharp on the tongue, lingering in the nose. I tried to drive faster. The figure didn't appear, but the sense of it remained. Watching, gliding, patient, I passed mile markers that should have existed, or maybe they didn't. Each blink revealed the same stretch of highway, endless, and the emptiness wasn't empty. The road hummed under the tires, a low vibration through the seat, through the bones, like the asphalt itself was alive. I wanted to stop, to look back. My hands shook. The fear wasn't sharp or sudden. It was slow, deliberate, crawling under my skin. I dared not blink for too long. Every time I did, I thought I saw it at the edge of the fog, gliding, patient. A smooth, impossible movement that mocked reason. I didn't see it again, but I could feel it, a weight pressing just beyond perception. The fog clung to the car, thick and damp. The air smelled of iron and cold leaves, lingering metallic and alive. I drove on, tires whispering, engine humming. The highway stretched endlessly. The night pressed in, and I knew. It wasn't gone. It never left. It only waited. The rest stop appeared suddenly in the fog, pale and glowing as if waiting. Tiles gleamed under dim fluorescent lights. Steam rose from coffee machines, curling upward in soft, curling ribbons. The place was empty. Not a single soul moved. Not a single sound except the faint hum of electricity. I stepped out of the car. The air was damp, carrying a sharp metallic tang, mixed with the smell of stale coffee and wet asphalt. Footsteps echoed behind me, soft and uneven, though I was alone. I walked toward the entrance. Every stall in the bathroom felt too quiet, too perfect. And then I heard it, soft footsteps following me. Not outside, not on the tiles, but somewhere behind the air itself. I glanced into the mirrors. Shadows twisted, stretched across the walls. Every reflection held a shape that wasn't mine. A figure leaned just beyond the glass, patient, watching, impossible to define. The coffee machines hissed, steam rising in slow ribbons. I could smell it clearly, warm and bitter, though no one had brewed a cup. The silence pressed close, like the fog itself had entered the room. I tried to leave. The door creaked, a long, low sound that echoed across the empty parking lot. Footsteps seemed to follow, though the asphalt remained unbroken. I could feel them, patient, lingering just out of sight. I stepped back outside. The fog curled around the tires and lights of my car. Shadows pressed into the edges of vision. The warm hum of the engines under the cars in the parking lot was missing. There were no cars, yet the presence of movement lingered. I walked toward my car slowly, every step careful. The reflections in the glass seemed to follow, tilting, stretching. Something brushed past the edge of my sight, cold, damp, slow, patient. The fog shifted, and the rest stop seemed to stretch, hallways lengthening, tiles never-ending. Every glance back revealed subtle movements, shapes bending in impossible angles, merging into the shadows. I swallowed, breath shallow, tasting metallic fear on my tongue. The car door was closer than it should have been. Wind pressed against it, soft but insistent, rattling the frame faintly. I slid inside. Engine hummed low, tires whispering over wet asphalt. The fog wrapped around the car as I started to drive, curling along the edges like fingers. As I pulled onto the highway, I dared to glance back. The rest stop had not changed. The glow remained. Steam curled in the still air. But the shadows, they didn't leave. They lingered just beyond the lights, patient. Every mile felt stretched, elongated by the weight of the unseen watchers. Tires hummed. Engine droned. The night pressed close, damp and metallic. I realized then, slowly, with the creeping weight of certainty, that some places are not abandoned. They exist only to observe, only to wait, and the rest stop was alive with patient shadows, waiting for the next traveler to notice them, to hear them, to feel them pressing just out of reach. I kept driving. The fog swallowed the glow behind me, but the presence lingered. The shadows traveled silently, patient, stretching across the night like a breath I could not see, but could feel, and I understood. Some roads, some places, do not want to be left. They only want to be remembered. The highway stretched straight into darkness. A thin fog pressed close to the asphalt, curling around the tires like cold smoke. Ahead, a line of trucks moved steadily, red taillights blinking in a steady, almost mechanical rhythm. I followed at a cautious distance, engine humming softly beneath me. The tires whispered over the road. Wind pressed against the car, damp and metallic, and then the first truck vanished. I blinked. The red light was gone. No sound, no movement. Only empty road stretched ahead, silent. The second truck disappeared the same way. Blink, gone. The third vanished before I could focus. I swallowed hard. The hum of the engine felt unnaturally loud now. Even the tires rolling steadily over asphalt seemed to whisper too sharply, like something was listening. I looked behind me. Nothing. The highway stretched empty. No headlights, no tail lights, no shapes. Just fog and silence. Time felt broken. Minutes stretched into long, shallow breaths. Each blink brought only more emptiness. I pressed the accelerator, hoping to catch the next truck before it vanished. The fog pressed in closer, curling around the car like a living thing. Shadows leaned in from the roadside, bending the edges of vision. And then, I noticed something worse. My car no longer made a sound. No engine hum, no tires whispering, nothing. It moved silently over the asphalt, gliding through the night. Every blink revealed the same empty highway. No trucks, no convoy, just the soft, impossible feeling of something moving alongside me. The air smelled metallic and damp, like wet iron pressed to skin. I touched the steering wheel. It was colder than it should have been. The fog pressed in, soft and heavy, twisting my thoughts. I wanted to stop. The silence pressed against me, unyielding, heavy. It was patient, watching. I tried to measure distance. Mile markers appeared and disappeared. The road twisted subtly under the fog, curving in ways I couldn't account for. A sudden chill ran down my spine. The feeling of eyes, unseen, pressing against the car from all sides. The highway seemed alive, waiting, patient. I drove faster, but the emptiness remained. No headlights appeared. No shapes formed in the fog, and yet the sense of being followed persisted. Every mile felt like an hour. Every heartbeat echoed against the steel of the car. I dared not turn my head too far. The edge of my vision held movement that shouldn't exist. The fog thickened further. Wind pressed along the tires. The asphalt hummed beneath the wheels, low and steady. I realized then the convoy was never real. Not the trucks, not the lights. It was a lure, a patient presence, a wait in the fog, following, waiting. I blinked. For a moment, the emptiness felt total. Then, the feeling of movement pressed just at the edge again. I didn't look. I didn't stop. I kept driving, alone, on a highway that no longer belonged entirely to me. A road that swallowed sound and shape alike. The red lights never returned. The trucks never reappeared. And yet, the presence lingered, patient, silent, unseen, but unmistakable. And I drove on, into the darkness, into the fog, into the still, endless night. The fog curled low across the highway, soft and thick, pressing against the tires. I drove slowly, every sense alert. And then, ahead, I saw it. An old roadside call box. Rusting metal, chipped paint, humming faintly with static. It stood alone in the mist, leaning slightly as if waiting. I pulled over, engine quiet, tires whispering against wet asphalt. The air smelled metallic, damp, sharp with ozone. Something about the box. It felt alive. I lifted the receiver. Static hissed. Low, soft, curling through the cabin. And then, a voice. My voice. Distorted, warped, repeating my last thoughts aloud. Every hesitation, every doubt. It echoed back at me, a reflection I couldn't ignore. Then, it whispered something I hadn't yet thought. Soft, deliberate, crawling under my skin. A sentence forming from the corners of my mind before I even spoke it. I froze. The tires hummed faintly. Wind pressed against the car like damp fingers. Every shadow in the fog seemed to lean closer. I wanted to hang up. But curiosity, dread, all at once held me. The voice whispered again, layering predictions over my own thoughts. Things I might do, places I might drive, decisions before I made them. The air inside the car grew thick, almost tangible. Cold metal pressed against my hands. The fog outside twisted around the lights, curling soft, patient, watching. I tried to speak. The words left my mouth hollow. The voice repeated them before I even finished, and then added something I hadn't yet thought. A shiver ran down my spine. The call box wasn't broken. It wasn't mechanical. It was aware. I put down the receiver. Static lingered, faint, buzzing softly in my ears. The fog pressed closer. The road stretched endless, empty, patient. I started the engine. Tires whispered over asphalt. The call box remained behind me, faintly humming in the mist. And I knew it would wait, waiting for the next traveler, for the next thought, for the next breath. The highway seemed different now. Every mile felt watched. Every shadow pressed close. Every blink carried the memory of that distorted voice. The fog wrapped around the car like fingers curling in soft and tight. I drove on. Engine low, tires whispering, heartbeat echoing, and in the distance I thought I heard it again. Soft, warped, patient. Repeating thoughts I hadn't yet formed. I swallowed, breath tight in my chest. The call box was gone behind me, but the voice, it lingered, through the fog, through the miles, through the still night air, waiting, patient, and unseen. Some things follow, some things remember, and some things know you before you even exist. I kept driving, alone, and aware of every thought, every secret, every possibility that had yet to pass through my mind. The night pressed in. The road stretched endless, and the call box hummed somewhere just beyond sight. The night was heavy with fog, curling low over the asphalt, soft and wet against the tires. The highway stretched endlessly ahead. Every mile felt like hours, every blink longer than it should be. I noticed the markers first out of the corner of my eye, numbers glowing faintly under the headlights. But they weren't rising as they should have. They were falling. Each mile marker burned from the inside, faint, pale light illuminating the edges of the road. I blinked, one, then the next. They counted down. Wind pressed softly against the car, damp and metallic. The smell of wet leaves lingered heavy in the fog. Every shadow leaned just beyond my sight. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles pale under the soft dashboard glow. Tires whispered against asphalt that seemed darker than it should be. Time felt wrong. Minutes stretched like elastic. The numbers on the markers ticked down slowly, deliberately, like a heartbeat counting toward something I wasn't ready to face. The fog thickened. It pressed against the headlights, curling around the edges, soft and suffocating. The air smelled faintly metallic, damp, like iron left out in the rain. Then I saw it, at 0. Something waiting beside the road, silent, still, impossible to define, yet undeniably there. I wanted to stop. Every instinct screamed to turn away, to reverse, to flee. But I kept driving, tires whispering, engine humming. The fog pressing close, patient, alive. The shadow, or whatever it was, didn't move. It simply waited, watching, patient, as the numbers counted down. I realized then, the markers weren't just numbers. They were warnings. They were measurements of something beyond time, beyond distance. The air inside the car grew thick. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. I could feel it. Weight pressing against my chest, cold and insistent. I glanced in the mirrors. Nothing. The road behind was empty, yet the feeling of being followed lingered. Shadows leaned just beyond the lights, curling soft and patient around the tires. Every mile felt longer than it should. Every blink brought the faint impression of movement, though nothing passed across the road. The 0 marker receded behind me, glowing faintly in the fog. The shadow remained, patient, waiting. I pressed the accelerator. The tires whispered against asphalt that seemed impossibly long. The numbers continued to count down in memory, burning softly into my mind. Time itself felt fragile, stretching, bending. The fog, the asphalt, the shadows, all seemed aware, patient, watching. I realized then that the highway didn't end at 0. It never did. It only stretched further, longer, darker. The fog pressed around the car as I drove on. The wind whispered against the doors, soft and deliberate. Every shadow held a presence just beyond the edges of perception. I dared not stop. I dared not blink too long. The mile markers had counted down to 0, but something had waited all along. Patient, unseen, relentless. I swallowed, breath tight in my chest. Tires whispering beneath me, engine low and steady. And I drove into the fog, into the night, into the endless stretch of road, where nothing ended, where nothing waited, but everything watched. Fog wrapped the highway like a thick, damp blanket, pressing close to the asphalt. The road stretched endlessly ahead, empty except for the hum of my tires. Then I saw it, a figure standing by the roadside, pale, glowing faintly, almost ethereal, as if light itself clung to their skin. I slowed the car, heart thudding, breath tight in my chest, instinct screamed to drive past. but something held me. Something soft, patient, drawing me closer. I stopped. Engine hummed quietly beneath me. The fog pressed against the headlights, curling around the tires in slow, deliberate spirals. The figure didn't move, didn't beckon, didn't speak. I unlocked the door. Nothing entered. No step onto the asphalt. No movement beyond the soft glow, and yet the back seat creaked. Subtle, impossible, as if weight had settled there, invisible, silent. I glanced in the mirrors. Shadows flickered. Shapes leaned and twisted just beyond sight. Wind pressed against the car, damp and metallic. A faint smell of wet leaves and iron lingered in the fog. I wanted to speak. Words caught in my throat. The figure's presence? Patient, pressing, almost alive. I tried to move. The tires whispered over asphalt, engine low and steady. The back seat creaked again. Slow, soft, relentless. The figure remained on the roadside, glowing faintly. Not fading, not advancing. Only watching. The fog curled tighter around the car. Shadows pressed along the edges of vision. Every blink carried the feeling of being followed, measured, studied. I drove on slowly. Each mile stretched impossibly long. The headlights caught glimpses of shapes bending in the fog. The back seat, patient, shifting slightly as if breathing. Time became slippery. Minutes stretched unnaturally. The road ahead blurred, wet asphalt reflecting the pale glow. I dared not look back. Every glance revealed only fog and shadow, but I could feel it. The weight, the presence, patient, waiting. Wind whispered across the hood, soft and deliberate. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. The figure faded into the mist slowly, impossibly, yet the back seat creaked again. Not a sound, not a presence visible. Only weight, only memory, only awareness, I realized then. It wasn't about being seen. It was about being felt, being known, being carried along the road, patient and silent, every mile stretched. The fog pressed closer. Shadows curled at the edges of vision. The figure might be gone, but the presence, the weight, remained, patient, silent, impossible to ignore. I drove faster, cautiously, tires whispering against wet asphalt. The road seemed endless. The fog thickened around the edges of the headlights, soft, insistent. The back seat shifted once more, soft, slight, deliberate, and I understood. Some things travel with you, not in sight, not in sound, but in the slow, patient weight of knowing. I kept driving, the pale glow receding behind me, the fog curling around every mile. The back seat, patient, waiting. And the highway stretched endlessly, dark, silent, and aware. The night was quiet except for the hum of the tires on wet asphalt. Fog curled low, soft and thick, clinging to the edges of the road. Ahead, a bridge appeared, long, endless. Water stretched on both sides, black and still, reflecting a sky that seemed wrong. I eased the car forward. Headlights cutting through the mist. The surface hummed beneath the tires, smooth, metallic, alive. The water below glimmered, reflecting stars that didn't match the sky above. They twinkled in impossible patterns, shifting slowly, as if whispering secrets in some language I couldn't understand. I blinked. The reflections changed, slow and deliberate, curling over the black surface like soft fingers. Wind pressed against the car, damp and cool, carrying a faint metallic scent. Every mile felt longer. The bridge stretched, stretching. I glanced at the guardrails. They seemed to lean in, stretching upward, bending slightly as if the bridge itself was alive, patient. The hum beneath the tires grew softer, deeper, echoing in the chest. I pressed the accelerator gently. The road beneath the tires hummed, responding almost aware. The farther I drove, the darker the water became, swallowing reflections, swallowing the edges of light. A shiver ran down my spine. The air smelled wet, metallic, alive. I could feel the fog pressing soft and close, carrying whispers I couldn't hear, shaping thoughts I couldn't name. I dared not stop. I dared not look down. The bridge seemed endless. Every turn of the wheel stretched farther than it should. The horizon ahead did not come closer, yet I moved. Slowly, tire by tire. Breath by breath, the stars above shifted subtly. The water below mirrored something different. Shapes in the mist, bent and twisted, reflecting impossible patterns, bending toward the car, patient, silent. I tried to measure distance. The guardrails were always there, yet changing. The lights reflected back at me from angles that shouldn't exist. Time fractured. Seconds stretched, folded, blurred. Every mile became a meditation in fear, in awe, in the slow, deliberate crawl of something watching. Then, I blinked. The bridge still stretched endlessly. The water remained black, swallowing every reflection. Stars above were not stars. They were symbols, shifting, blinking softly in the fog. The hum beneath the tires was steady. The car moved forward without hesitation, but I knew I was not alone. Shadows curled at the edges of vision. Fog pressed against the windows like fingers. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin, loud, insistent, impossible to ignore. I realized slowly, with a creeping weight in my chest, that this bridge had no end. Not in the way I understood. Not in space. Not in time. Only stretching, waiting, patient, alive. I pressed on, tires whispering, engine low and steady, wind pressing against the car, fog curling and clinging, shadows bending toward the edges of the headlights. The bridge didn't want me to reach the other side. It wanted me to drive. It wanted me to see. It wanted me to feel the slow, patient hum of something beyond understanding. And I did. Every mile, every breath, every blink. The bridge stretched endlessly. The water beneath swallowed light. The stars above whispered in shapes that were not meant to be read. And I drove, patient, silent, aware, into the fog, into the night, into the bridge that would never end. The fog clung low, soft and wet, curling around the tires as I drove. The highway stretched endlessly, empty except for the hum of my engine. The night felt alive, patient, pressing against every inch of the car. I reached for the CB radio, the old box humming softly in the cabin. Truckers often talked through it, static-filled voices drifting through the night. I turned the dial. The hiss of static filled my ears, and then I heard my own voice, not my words, not my tone, but my voice. Distorted, slow, echoing, repeating things only I could know, only I could think. I froze. Tires whispered against the wet asphalt. Wind pressed gently against the doors, damp and metallic. The fog wrapped around the headlights like fingers, patient, curling. The voice continued, soft, deliberate, creeping through the cabin. It spoke of things I had done, thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud, and then it began to speak of things I hadn't yet done. I swallowed hard. Metal and damp pressed into the air. The static shifted, low and heavy, curling into the corners of my mind. Every thought felt mirrored, amplified, twisted. I tried to speak. My own voice sounded distant, hollow, swallowed by the static. The CB repeated it before I could finish, and added something more, something I hadn't yet thought. The fog thickened outside. Shadows bent along the edges of the headlights. The air smelled faintly metallic, damp, alive. I turned the dial, trying to break the connection. Static hissed, my voice, again, repeating, whispering, patient. Time fractured. Minutes stretched, folded over themselves. The highway beneath the tires hummed low, steady. The fog pressed closer, curling soft around the mirrors, the edges of the windshield. The voice spoke softly now, predicting my movements, reading my thoughts, shifting into future moments. I realized it knew the road as well as I did. Every mile, every curve, every blink, I gripped the wheel tighter. Tires whispered over asphalt that seemed to stretch longer, darker. The fog swirled, carrying shapes that bent impossibly at the edges of vision. I dared not stop. I dared not blink too long. The CB radio hummed and hissed, my voice layered over itself, patient, knowing, deliberate. The wind pressed against the car again, damp and metallic. I could feel shadows leaning closer at the edge of the headlights. Shapes bent in impossible angles across the fog, stretching and twisting as though alive. I realized then, the voice was not a voice, not a sound, not a machine. It was awareness. Patient, silent, impossible to ignore. It knew me. It knew the highway. It knew every choice I would make before I made it. The static hissed low and steady. The voice whispered one last prediction, soft and deliberate. And then, silence. The fog wrapped tighter around the car. Tires whispered softly over asphalt that seemed unending. The engine hummed low, steady, alive beneath me. I glanced behind. Nothing. The highway stretched empty, silent, patient. And yet, I could feel it. The awareness, the presence, watching, waiting. Every mile stretched longer than it should. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin. Every blink carried the memory of the voice, repeating thoughts I hadn't yet formed. I drove on. Into the fog, into the night, into the highway that listened, that remembered, that knew me before I knew myself, and I understood. Some roads do not only carry travelers. They carry thoughts. They carry awareness. They carry patience. I kept driving, alone, and the voice lingered. The fog lay thick over the highway, curling low along the asphalt. Tires whispered over wet pavement. The night pressed close, damp and metallic, carrying the faint smell of wet leaves and iron. A light appeared behind me, soft, distant at first, then brighter, flashing. A patrol car, unmarked, silent. I slowed instinctively. Engine hummed low beneath me. The lights continued flashing. I pulled over. The tires whispered over asphalt. The car behind me drew close, then stopped. Doors open, engine running, empty. I stared. Fog curled along the edges of the headlights. The patrol car remained still, patient, silent, watching. A shiver ran down my spine. Wind pressed softly against the car, cold and damp. The smell of metal, wet asphalt, and something I couldn't name filled the air. I glanced around. Nothing moved. No one approached. No footsteps. Only the empty patrol car, doors open, engine humming softly. Then, more lights appeared. Far ahead, flickering, moving slowly along the highway. The fog swallowed them, curling soft, patient, deliberate. I gripped the wheel tighter. The tires whispered over asphalt that seemed longer, darker. The wind pressed again, stronger this time, damp and insistent, as if urging me forward. The patrol car remained. Engine low, doors open, empty. I could feel it, patient, waiting, aware. Shadows curled at the edges of the headlights. The fog thickened, soft and deliberate, hiding shapes just beyond vision. I wanted to leave, but instinct screamed caution. The highway stretched endlessly. The lights ahead flickered, shifting, almost like eyes, patient and silent. Every mile felt longer than it should. Every blink stretched time, bending it across the asphalt. I dared not glance at the mirrors. But the presence was there, patient, waiting. Wind pressed against the car, carrying a faint metallic tang. The fog shifted, curling in soft spirals along the guardrails. The patrol car's doors remained open. Engine humming low, steady, alive. I eased back onto the highway. The car behind did not move. The lights ahead flickered closer, but the fog swallowed distance. The road beneath the tires hummed softly, stretching endlessly. Time felt fractured. Minutes elongated, folded into seconds. Every shadow pressed closer, patient, silent, deliberate. The patrol car followed, or perhaps waited. I could not tell. Every instinct urged to accelerate. Every rational thought whispered to ignore it. And yet, it remained, empty, doors open, engine humming low. I pressed the accelerator gently. Tires whispered over the wet asphalt. The fog clung closer. The lights ahead seemed aware, flickering softly, patient, waiting. The highway stretched endlessly. The night pressed in. The patrol car remained behind, impossible, silent, watching. I dared not stop. I dared not blink. The fog and shadows pressed in, alive with quiet, deliberate patience. And then, slowly the car disappeared. No engine, no doors, no lights. Only the road stretched ahead, empty, silent, endless. But I knew. The presence had not gone. It lingered, patient, waiting, somewhere in the fog beyond sight. Every mile hummed beneath the tires. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin. The highway was not just a road. It was alive, watching, waiting. I drove on, alone, the night thick with fog. The memory of the empty patrol car following softly, patiently, lingering just beyond perception. And I understood. Some presences are not seen to be felt, not chased to be outrun, only waited for, patient and silent, on a highway that stretches endlessly, beyond time, beyond reason, beyond the edges of light. The highway stretched ahead, wet and empty. Fog curled low, soft and thick, pressing against the tires. The hum of the engine felt louder than it should, echoing inside the car. I noticed the first silhouette on the overpass. Still, silent, watching. A dark shape against the faint glow of streetlights. Head tilted slightly, patient. I blinked. Another figure appeared, and another. All along the overpass, shadowed forms leaned over the edge, tilting together, watching. Wind pressed softly against the windows, damp and cool. The fog curled along the edges of the headlights. Every shadow seemed to bend slightly, impossible angles, watching. I gripped the wheel tighter. Tires whispered over asphalt, low and steady. The air smelled of wet leaves and metal, heavy, alive. I tried to focus on the road. The figures above didn't move, but I felt them shifting, patient, heads tilting in unison, watching every inch of the car beneath. The fog thickened. It pressed close, curling around the tires, soft and deliberate. Shadows at the edge of vision flickered, bending toward the overpass. I swallowed, breath tight in my chest. Every mile felt longer than it should. Every blink revealed more figures, more tilting heads, patient, deliberate, silent. The wind carried faint whispers, metallic, damp, alive. Not words, not language, but something aware, reaching through the night, pressing close. I drove on slowly, cautiously. Every overpass ahead held more shapes, more silhouettes. All tilting heads, patient, silent, aware, watching, waiting. The fog seemed to lean in from the sides, curling along the guardrails. The headlights caught glimpses of impossible angles. Shadows stretched downward, twisting toward the asphalt. I dared not stop. I dared not glance too long. The figures were not meant to be approached. They existed only to observe, to tilt their heads in unison, to wait. Time felt fractured. Minutes stretched, folded over themselves. The highway hummed beneath the tires, the engine low and steady. Shadows bent in the fog, curling toward the edges of perception. I realized then I was not alone. The overpass figures were patient, unmoving, unseen in ways beyond sight. Every mile felt heavier. Every heartbeat echoed in the chest. The fog pressed closer, curling in soft spirals along the guardrails and asphalt. Blinking, I saw them all along the highway, silent silhouettes tilting their heads together, patient, watching. I tried to focus on the road ahead. The tires whispered over asphalt. The engine hummed low. The fog carried metallic, damp whispers that I couldn't hear but could feel. Every overpass revealed more. More figures, more tilting heads, patient and silent, waiting for something I couldn't understand, something I could not name. I drove on. The highway stretched endlessly, fog curling, shadows bending, shapes tilting, patient, silent, waiting, and I understood. Some presences do not move to follow. They simply observe. They tilt their heads and wait for the next traveler, for the next blink, for the next heartbeat to echo across the asphalt. I kept driving, alone, through the fog, through the silent tilting eyes of the overpass figures, into a night that seemed endless, patient, and aware. Fog lay heavy across the asphalt, soft and damp, pressing close to the tires. The hum of the engine seemed louder, echoing inside the cabin, stretched by the thick night air. Ahead, the road forked. Two highways identical, side by side, stretching into the fog, vanishing into nothing. I slowed. Tires whispered over wet asphalt. The wind pressed against the car, metallic and cold. I glanced down one road, then the other. Both looked the same. Both felt the same. Impossible to choose, yet one demanded it. I chose the right lane. The fog curled along the edges of the headlights, soft and deliberate. Every shadow bent toward the road, patient, watching. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. The fog thickened. The road stretched endlessly, and then I saw it, my own headlights, on the left highway, mirroring my every move. My own car, or something impossibly like it, driving in perfect sync. I blinked. The shadowed twin followed every turn, every adjustment of the wheel. Impossible, yet undeniably there. Wind pressed damp against the windows. The air smelled metallic, wet, alive. Every heartbeat echoed through the chest, loud, insistent. I tried to drive faster. The twin mirrored me. No hesitation, no delay. Just perfect, deliberate motion. Watching, copying, waiting. Shadows curled along the edge of the fog. Tires whispered over asphalt that seemed to stretch farther, longer. Impossible. The highway split, yet somehow merged in perception. Impossible to distinguish. I dared not stop. I dared not look back. The twin car matched me mile for mile, breath for breath. The fog pressed closer, soft, insistent, alive. Time became slippery. Minutes stretched. Seconds folded into the asphalt, into the wind, into the tires' whisper. The air smelled faintly metallic, damp, and iron-strong. Every mile felt measured. Every blink felt deliberate, watched, copied. I realized then the split was not about choice. It was about observation, about reflection, about something waiting, patient, beyond reason. The twin vehicle glided beside me in memory and in sight. No sound, no engine, just presence. Every shadow along the fog leaned toward it, stretching impossibly. I pressed forward. Tires whispered over asphalt. Wind pressed damp against the car. The fog swirled, bending shadows curling around the headlights, and then slowly I understood. The roads were not separate. They were mirrors. Two highways, two reflections, one endless watch. I dared not blink too long. The twin moved perfectly, shadows bending, fog curling, patient and silent. I drove on, alone on one side, watching the other, both stretching endlessly, folding time, twisting space, patient and deliberate. Every mile stretched longer than it should. Every heartbeat echoed in the chest. Every shadow pressed close. The split highway was not a choice. It was awareness. It was patience. It was endless. I kept driving. The twin mirrored me. The fog pressed soft and close. The night stretched endlessly. The highways folded into each other, patient, silent, watching, and I understood. Some roads are never meant to be chosen. They are meant to be observed. They are meant to reflect you. Patient, silent, and endless. The fog pressed close along the highway, curling damp against the tires. The night was silent, thick with weight, metallic and cold. Exhausted, I spotted a faint glow in the distance, a motel, small, roadside, the kind that shouldn't exist so far from anything. I parked. Engine hummed low beneath me. The air smelled faintly of damp asphalt and old wood. Windows, or the lack of them, stared back at me blankly. Every door looked the same. Numbered rooms glowing faintly in the fog. No clocks, no signs of life. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and something sharper I couldn't name. Carpet pressed soft underfoot. Lights hummed low, steady, patient. Each room was identical. Bed neatly made. Sheets folded. No windows to the outside. No clocks to measure time. I lay down, exhausted. The bed was soft, almost welcoming. And then, the TV flickered on, static first. Then, a view of my own bed. Live, unmoving, yet impossibly aware. I froze. The hum of the lights grew louder, pressing against my ears. Footsteps, or something like them, soft and deliberate, pressed against the walls. Every shadow twisted subtly in the corners of the room. I tried to leave. Doors led only to identical hallways. No windows, no escape, only repetition. The TV flickered again. The image of the bed, shifting slightly, reflecting my every movement. I swallowed. Breath tight. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. I tried to speak. My words echoed softly in the room, swallowed by the hum. The shadows bent closer, patient, observing. Time felt broken. Minutes stretched like elastic. Each blink revealed only more repetition, more sameness, more observation. The bed beneath me shifted slightly, though nothing moved. Sheets rustled as if someone, or something, was already there. I pressed the door handle. The hallway stretched impossibly long, each room identical. Lights humming low, steady, patient. I lay back down. The TV flickered again. My own bed reflected perfectly. Every movement, every breath, every thought, captured, mirrored, observed. The air pressed close, damp and metallic. Shadows curled around the corners of the room, patient, deliberate. The hum of the lights filled the space, vibrating faintly in the chest. I realized slowly, with a creeping weight, that the motel didn't exist to house me. It existed to watch, to reflect, to measure every moment of thought, every blink, every heartbeat. I closed my eyes, the bed beneath me soft and waiting, the TV flickering silently, capturing every detail. No windows, no clocks, no escape, only observation, patient, silent, relentless. I drifted into a restless sleep. The motel hummed softly, alive with awareness. Every movement I made, every breath, every thought, recorded, and I understood. Some places are not meant to be stayed in. They are meant to be remembered, observed, measured. I lay there alone. The motel with no windows watching patiently, lights humming, TV flickering, shadows curling softly in the corners. Waiting. The highway ahead vanished into darkness. Fog pressed low, curling damp against the tires. The night was thick, metallic, heavy with silence. And then I saw it. A tunnel. Long, narrow, glowing faintly, pale light reflecting off wet asphalt. The air smelled faintly of ozone and damp stone. Humming, low, constant. I eased the car forward. The lights flickered in sequence. Soft, deliberate, like someone, or something, was guiding the path. Tires whispered over the wet road. Wind pressed gently against the doors. The fog lingered at the edges of vision, curling soft and patient. I noticed shadows first at the ceiling. Dark shapes bending subtly, moving slowly. Impossible angles, almost imperceptible shifts. They stretched forward as I drove, curling around the humming lights. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the cabin. Every heartbeat echoed in my chest, loud and insistent. The tunnel seemed alive, watching, aware. Guiding me deeper, I glanced in the mirrors. Nothing reflected behind. No road, no fog, only darkness pressing, patient. The lights pulsed in sequence, drawing me further. Halfway through, the exit vanished. The tunnel stretched impossibly long, curling beyond sight. Shadows moved along the ceiling, creeping softly, deliberate, patient. I gripped the wheel tighter. Tires whispered over asphalt that seemed to stretch farther, longer than possible. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. Wind pressed against the car, low, steady, pressing into my chest. The humming lights shifted, slower now, bending around curves that shouldn't exist. I felt the tunnel itself breathing, expanding, contracting softly, deliberately. Shadows stretched downward, curling along the sides of the car, touching the edges of perception. Every blink revealed movement where there should be none, shapes bending just beyond vision. Edges of light twisting impossibly, the hum in the ceiling vibrating softly in the chest. I realized slowly, a creeping weight in my spine, that I was not alone. Not a sound, not a presence visible, but something aware, patient, deliberate. I tried to accelerate. The tires whispered faster. The lights flickered more quickly. The shadows bent faster. The tunnel seemed to grow longer, darker, swallowing every inch of light behind me. Time fractured. Seconds stretched. Minutes folded into the asphalt, into the hum, into the soft pressing weight of presence. The air smelled metallic and damp. Every breath felt slow, deliberate, like the tunnel itself measured it. The humming lights pulsed against the ceiling in rhythm with my heart, or perhaps my thoughts. I dared not stop. I dared not look away. The exit had vanished. The walls pressed closer, soft, damp, alive. A shadow brushed the edge of the headlights. No form, no substance, only presence, patient, observing, waiting. The hum grew louder. It vibrated against the tires, the steering wheel, the chest, the ears. The asphalt beneath me seemed impossibly smooth, impossibly long, impossibly endless. I realized then. The tunnel was not a passage. It was an awareness, a test, a patient observer of motion, breath, thought. The shadows bent and twisted above, curling toward the lights, around the car, pressing close but never touching. The fog from the highway remained faint at the edges, carrying the faint scent of wet leaves, metallic, alive. I pressed forward. Tires whispered over asphalt. The hum filled every corner of the car. The shadows above stretched impossibly, bending the light, patient, deliberate. Time lost meaning. Miles stretched endlessly. Every heartbeat echoed against the chest. Every blink carried the memory of the shadows, the lights, the hum. And then I blinked again. The exit reappeared. Faint, distant, impossibly far. The tunnel had shifted, curved in ways impossible. The lights flickered softly, pulsing, patient. I drove out slowly. The hum lingered, soft, low, deliberate. Shadows pressed just beyond sight, curling along the edges of the headlights. The fog rolled out behind me, metallic, damp, alive. The night swallowed the tunnel behind me. The highway stretched endless ahead, empty, patient. I felt it still. The presence, the awareness, patient, watching. Every mile hummed beneath the tires. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin. The tunnel remained, in memory, in thought, in awareness, patient and silent. I kept driving, alone, into the fog, into the night, carrying the hum of the tunnel inside me, patient, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Fog pressed low along the highway, curling damp against the tires. The night was thick, metallic, heavy with silence. Every mile stretched endlessly, every blink longer than it should be. Then I saw it. A car beside me, headlights flickering softly, rhythmically, like breathing. No one inside. No engine sound beyond the low hum of tires against asphalt. I slowed, curiosity and dread twisting together. Wind pressed against the car doors, damp and cold. The fog wrapped around the headlights, soft, patient, alive. The car moved in perfect sync with me. Every turn, every adjustment of the wheel mirrored flawlessly. Impossible, yet undeniable. I glanced inside. Empty. No driver. No shadow. Just the faint hum of a presence, alive and deliberate. The tires whispered over asphalt. The engine of my own car hummed low beneath me. And yet, I could feel the other car, patient, watching. I pressed the accelerator. It matched me instantly. No delay, no hesitation. The headlights flickered in rhythm, soft and deliberate. Shadows pressed at the edges of the fog. Shapes bent subtly, impossibly, curling around the tires, leaning into the road. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. Wind pressed against the doors, carrying a faint whisper I could not understand. Time stretched. Seconds folded into miles. Minutes disappeared into the hum of the tires, the low vibration of the road, the presence beside me. I tried to break away, turned sharply, swerved, changed lanes. The car followed perfectly. No driver. No hands. Just motion. Alive. Patient. Every blink revealed impossible angles. Shadows curled along the edges of the headlights. The fog pressed closer, soft and deliberate, alive in ways I couldn't name. The headlights turned slightly toward me. A rhythm in the flicker. Breathing. The other car moved as though aware, anticipating, patient. I dared not stop. I dared not look away. The road stretched endlessly. Tires whispered softly over asphalt. The car beside me matched every movement, silent, impossible, watching. Wind pressed damp against my face. The fog curled tighter, leaning into the edges of the windshield. The air smelled metallic, wet, alive. The low hum beneath the tires vibrated in my chest. Every heartbeat echoed in the cabin. Every blink carried awareness from the car beside me. I realized slowly, creeping like cold fingers along my spine. This was not a vehicle, not a machine. It was something aware, patient, observing. I pressed forward. The tires whispered over asphalt, low and steady. Headlights flickered in rhythm, shadows bent impossibly. The fog pressed closer, soft and deliberate. Time became fractured. Minutes stretched. Seconds folded over the road, over the hum, over the faint, rhythmic flicker of lights beside me. The car beside me turned the wheel slightly. No hands moved it. No engine beyond the hum. Only motion, alive, patient. I swallowed, breath tight in my chest. The fog wrapped soft and close. Shadows pressed along the edges of vision. The car beside me mirrored every thought, every hesitation, every blink. I pressed the accelerator gently. It matched me instantly. Headlights flickering softly in rhythm. No one inside, just awareness, patient, watching. I drove on, tires whispering over asphalt, fog curling around the headlights, shadows bending along the edges of perception. The car beside me remained, silent, impossible, alive in a way I could not name. Every mile stretched, every heartbeat echoed, every blink carried the memory of motion, rhythm, presence. And I understood. Some things do not need hands to move. Some things do not need voices to watch. Some things exist solely to mirror you, to anticipate, to wait. I kept driving, alone in my own car, the other beside me, patient, silent, watching. Fog pressed low across the highway, curling damp against the tires. The night was thick, metallic, heavy with silence. Every mile stretched endlessly, and the asphalt hummed beneath the car. Ahead, an exit ramp appeared. Soft lights outlined it, pale and deliberate, almost inviting. I eased the car forward. Tires whispered over wet asphalt. Wind pressed cold and metallic against the doors. The ramp curved sharply, but something was wrong. Gravity shifted subtly, pulling the car upward as if the road itself had changed. The tires clung to the asphalt, but the hum beneath me felt alive, deliberate. Stars above spun slowly, impossibly. The world seemed to tilt, soft and patient. I gripped the wheel tighter. Tires whispered over the ramp, low and steady. Fog pressed close, damp and metallic, curling around the headlights. The exit stretched endlessly, curving in impossible angles. I blinked. The horizon above twisted. The moon shifted slightly, impossibly, in the wrong direction. Wind pressed damp against the car, carrying faint metallic scents and wet earth. Shadows curled along the edges of the ramp. Every blink revealed subtle shifts in the road. Soft, deliberate, impossible, the tires whispered. The hum beneath the engine vibrated in my chest. The ramp bent upward, downward, twisting beyond reason. Gravity pressed against every inch of the car, low and steady, alive. I tried to accelerate. The car clung to the ramp effortlessly. The hum of the asphalt pulsed with every heartbeat. Shadows curled impossibly along the guardrails, bending toward the car, patient and deliberate. Time fractured. Minutes stretched like elastic. Seconds folded into the road, into the hum, into the soft, pressing weight of presence around me. The moon shifted again, impossibly. The stars spun above in patterns that made no sense. The fog thickened, curling around the headlights, soft and insistent. I realized slowly, a creeping weight pressing along my spine. This ramp was not an exit. It was a loop, a patient, deliberate fold in space. The tires whispered along asphalt that twisted impossibly beneath them. The car clung, unbroken, but I felt the weight of something watching, alive, patient. Every blink revealed new angles, impossible curves. The fog pressed damp and close. Wind hummed against the car, metallic and alive. Shadows bent along the edges of vision, patient, deliberate. I tried to leave. The ramp spiraled endlessly. Every turn felt like repetition. Every mile stretched farther than it should. And then I emerged. Back on the same highway. The fog thickened softly around the tires. The moon had shifted, impossibly, to the opposite horizon. The stars spun differently. Shapes curled at the edges of the fog, patient and deliberate. Shadows twisted slightly along the road, pressing close, soft and alive. I understood then. The exit ramp had not ended. It had reversed. Time, gravity, direction folded impossibly around me. I had traveled forward, yet remained in the same place. The hum beneath the tires lingered. Wind pressed damp and metallic against the car. The fog curled around the headlights, soft, deliberate, alive. Every mile hummed beneath me. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin. The road stretched endlessly, patient and silent. I kept driving, alone, through the fog, through the night. Through the ramp that reversed everything, patient, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Fog pressed low along the highway, curling damp against the tires. The night was thick, metallic, heavy with silence. Every mile stretched endlessly beneath the hum of the engine. Ahead, a billboard flickered faintly in the fog. Soft static, humming low. I slowed instinctively. Tires whispered over wet asphalt. Wind pressed against the doors, damp and insistent. The static shifted. And then, words appeared. Do not stop. The letters glowed pale, deliberate, impossibly bright against the dark. I blinked. The fog curled closer around the headlights. Shadows bent softly along the edges of vision, patient and deliberate. I eased the car forward. The words changed. Do not stop. My exact speed appeared. My direction, I swallowed. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. The hum of the tires pressed softly in my chest. Every heartbeat echoed, loud, insistent. I tried to look away. The billboard shifted. My speed updated. My lane position. Every movement recorded in glowing, deliberate letters. Wind pressed damp against the windows. The fog wrapped soft and close. Shadows curled along the edges of the headlights. I realized slowly, creeping along my spine. This was not a sign. It was awareness, patient, observant, relentless. I pressed the accelerator gently. Tires whispered over asphalt. The billboard updated. Every detail of my motion, every blink, every thought, captured, time stretched. Minutes folded into miles. Seconds bent along the highway, mirrored in the glowing letters. The air smelled metallic, wet, alive. Shadows pressed close. The fog curled around the edges of the headlights, patient and deliberate. The billboard flickered again. Words shifted. Now turn left, I hesitated. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. The tires whispered low, steady. The fog pressed closer. Wind hummed against the car. The shadows bent impossibly along the edges of vision. I turned. The road curved soft and deliberate. The billboard updated instantly. Now right. Now straight. Every choice I made, measured, recorded, predicted. I realized then the billboard did not merely display messages. It was alive, patient, watching, aware of every mile, every blink, every heartbeat. The fog thickened, curled soft and low along the guardrails. Shadows twisted at the edges of vision, pressing toward the headlights. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. Every mile stretched impossibly. Every heartbeat echoed in the chest. The hum of the tires, low and steady, matched the rhythm of the billboard, patient, deliberate. I pressed forward. Every message updated, every detail mirrored, every movement anticipated. The fog wrapped closer. Shadows bent impossibly along the edges of perception. Wind pressed damp and metallic against the car, and then, slowly, the billboard fell silent. No words, only static humming low. The fog thickened, curling soft and deliberate around the headlights. The road stretched endlessly, but I knew. It had not gone. The awareness lingered, patient, silent, watching. Every mile hummed beneath the tires. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin. Every blink carried the memory of glowing letters, measuring, predicting, observing. I kept driving, alone, through the fog, through the night. Along the highway that spoke in words I could not ignore, patient, deliberate, impossible to escape. The fog lay heavy over the highway, curling damp against the tires. Night pressed close, metallic and cold. The air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and gasoline. I spotted a gas station ahead, small, lonely, glowing faintly through the mist. No other cars. No lights from inside. Only the soft hum of the pumps. I pulled in. Tires whispered over the wet asphalt. Wind pressed gently against the doors, damp and insistent. The hum of the pumps was steady, low, almost deliberate. I lifted the handle. Fuel began to flow. But the gauge? It did not move. No numbers changed. The tank remained empty, soft clicks of the pump repeating endlessly. I glanced around. No attendant. No one else. Only the hum of lights and the faint metallic scent in the air. I gripped the handle tighter. The pump began to vibrate softly, warm, almost alive. The hum beneath the lights grew louder, pressing into the chest. Shadows stretched along the edges of the station. Fog curled around the tires. Every blink revealed movement where there should be none. The handle pulsed in my hands. The warm vibration grew steady, deliberate. It felt as if something on the other end was feeding, waiting, observing. I stepped back. The pump continued. Fuel flowing endlessly, the gauge frozen, the hum vibrating softly through the air. Shadows bent at impossible angles along the edges of the station. The fog pressed close, soft and alive. I tried to leave. Tires whispered over wet asphalt. The pump continued. The hum pressed against the cabin of the car. Every heartbeat echoed in time with the vibration, low and deliberate. Wind pressed metallic and damp against the car. The air smelled sharp, alive, impossible. The fog curled around the tires, patient, deliberate, watching. I gripped the wheel tighter. The pump's hum resonated through the chest. Every blink revealed new shadows, twisting subtly, impossible angles, patient, deliberate. Time fractured. Minutes stretched. Seconds folded over asphalt, over the hum, over the vibration in the pump handle. I realized slowly, the station was not here to refuel the car. It existed to measure, to feed, to observe. The warm vibration of the handle pulsed in rhythm with the tires. The fog pressed closer. Shadows bent along the edges of the lights. Every blink carried awareness. Soft, insistent, deliberate. I tried to lift the handle again. It continued to flow, warm and vibrating. Impossible to stop. Impossible to ignore. The hum of the station filled the air. Low, steady, alive. The fog wrapped around the car, metallic and damp. Shadows stretched impossibly along the edges of vision. I pressed forward. Tires whispered over asphalt. The pump continued, warm and deliberate. Every heartbeat echoed through the cabin, and then, slowly, the vibration subsided. The hum lingered. The fog wrapped close. Shadows pressed at the edges of the headlights. I understood. Some stations do not exist to serve. They exist to observe, to feed on movement, thought, awareness, patient, silent, relentless. I drove on, alone, through the fog, through the night. Every mile hummed beneath the tires. Every heartbeat echoed. Every blink carried the memory of warm vibration, patient, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Fog pressed low along the highway, damp and heavy against the tires. The night was thick, metallic, alive with silence. Every mile stretched endlessly beneath the hum of the engine. I parked on the shoulder. The air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and oil. Wind pressed softly against the car, curling damp around the edges. Then, a sound. Soft. Knocking. Coming from inside the locked trunk. I froze. Tires whispered low over the asphalt. The fog curled along the headlights, soft and deliberate. Shadows bent impossibly at the edges of vision. I reached for the trunk. The knocking continued. Soft, deliberate, insistent. I opened the trunk. Empty. No one inside. Nothing. But the knocking didn't stop. It pressed from beneath the car, echoing softly against metal and asphalt. Low, rhythmic, patient, alive. I swallowed. Breath tightened my chest. The fog curled close around the tires. Shadows bent at impossible angles along the edges of vision. Wind pressed damp and metallic against the doors. I pressed the brake gently. The knocking continued. Soft, insistent, deliberate. Impossible to ignore. Time stretched. Minutes folded into seconds. The hum of the tires echoed in the chest. Every heartbeat matched the rhythm of the knocks, low and alive. I tried to leave. The knocking followed. Beneath the car, pressing against metal, pressing into perception, patient and deliberate. The air smelled metallic, damp, alive. Fog curled along the edges of the headlights. Shadows twisted softly, impossibly at the edges of vision. I crouched, listening. The knocks pressed softly against the ears. Soft footsteps beneath the tires. Impossible angles, deliberate rhythm, patient. I realized slowly, creeping along the spine. The car was alive. Not in the way a machine hums, not in the way an engine breathes, but aware, observing, waiting. I pressed the accelerator gently. The tires whispered over asphalt. The knocking continued beneath the car. Soft, insistent, deliberate. Wind pressed damp and metallic against the car. The fog wrapped closer. Shadows bent impossibly along the edges of vision. The hum of the tires echoed through the cabin. Every mile stretched endlessly. Every heartbeat echoed in the chest. Every blink carried the memory of the knocking, patient, deliberate, alive beneath the car. I tried to stop. Tires whispered softly. The knocking pressed, low, rhythmic. Impossible to escape. The fog curled around the headlights, soft and deliberate. Shadows bent along the edges of perception, patient, observing. I understood slowly. Some presences do not need form to exist. Some presences do not need hands to touch. They exist beneath, around, inside perception. Patient, silent, relentless. I drove on, alone, through the fog, through the night. Every mile hummed beneath the tires. Every heartbeat echoed. Every blink carried the memory of soft knocks, alive, deliberate, impossible to ignore. And I knew it would follow, always patient, always beneath, always waiting. Fog pressed low along the highway, curling damp around the tires. The night was quiet, heavy with metallic stillness. Every mile stretched endlessly beneath the hum of the engine. I looked up. The stars were shifting, not like clouds moving in the wind. They blinked, rearranged themselves. Patterns forming, dissolving, impossible to follow. Wind pressed damp and cool against the doors. Tires whispered softly over wet asphalt. The air smelled metallic, faintly of ozone and damp earth. Blinking, I tried to focus. The constellations twisted. Shapes appeared, symbols I did not know, patterns not meant for human eyes. They blinked slowly, deliberate, patient. The fog curled along the edges of the headlights. Shadows bent impossibly along the roadside. The hum of the engine pressed softly in my chest. The stars above pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Not randomly, deliberate. Each blink revealed new arrangements, impossible geometries, symbols that felt alive. I swallowed. Breath tight in my chest. Wind pressed closer, soft, metallic, alive. The fog twisted along the edges of vision. Time stretched. Minutes folded into seconds. Every blink revealed another impossible pattern. Another arrangement. Another message in a language I could not name. I realized slowly. The sky was aware. Not passive. Not distant. Patient. Observing. Deliberate. Shadows curled along the roadside, twisting impossibly. Fog pressed soft against the tires. The hum of the engine vibrated through the cabin. Stars above pulsed, shifting in slow, deliberate rhythm. Every mile stretched longer than it should. Every heartbeat echoed. Every blink carried awareness from above. Soft, insistent, impossible to ignore. I pressed forward. Tires whispered over asphalt. Wind pressed damp against the doors. The fog curled tight along the headlights. Shadows bent at impossible angles along the edges of vision. The constellations above blinked again. Symbols rearranged themselves, moving in ways I could not comprehend. A code, a pattern, something not meant for human understanding. I tried to drive faster. The hum of the engine pressed low, steady. The stars pulsed faster. Patterns shifted, blinking, rearranging themselves, deliberate and alive. The fog thickened. Soft, damp curling around the tires. Shadows stretched impossibly at the edges of vision. I understood slowly. The sky above was not distant. It was patient. It was aware. It measured, observed, recorded. Every blink carried knowledge I could not name. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the stars. Every mile hummed beneath the tires. Soft, low, alive. I pressed onward. Through the fog. Through the night. Every shadow bent toward the headlights, patient and deliberate. Every symbol blinked above, impossible, aware, waiting. Time folded around the highway. Minutes became miles. Miles became thought. The sky rearranged itself. Soft, deliberate, patient. I knew then. Some presences do not descend. They do not touch. They watch. Patient, silent, impossible to ignore. I kept driving, alone, through the fog, through the night. With the sky above blinking messages I could not read, patterns impossible to understand, patient, observant, relentless, and I felt it then. The universe itself was aware, watching, deliberate, and I was only a small motion beneath its gaze. Fog lingered along the highway, damp and soft, curling against the tires. Dawn pressed faintly over the horizon, pale light bleeding into the mist. Every mile stretched endlessly beneath the hum of the engine. I spotted it then. A rest stop. Glowing faintly, impossibly clean, yet still wrapped in fog. No signs of life beyond the dim lights, no cars, no footsteps. I parked slowly. Tires whispered over wet asphalt. Wind pressed gently against the car doors, damp, metallic, alive. The hum of the engine vibrated low in the chest. Inside, the chairs were lined perfectly. Every seat filled with motionless figures, facing forward, silent, watching nothing. Eyes fixed ahead, unblinking, patient. I stepped carefully. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and cold metal. Soft footsteps echoed, my own, through the stillness. Yet the figures did not move, did not acknowledge. I glanced at each one. Faces pale, empty, expressionless. Not human, yet impossibly familiar. Something in the posture, the stillness, the quiet. Knew me, I shivered. The fog pressed softly against the windows, curling close. Shadows bent impossibly along the edges of the room, patient and deliberate. One chair was empty, the name carved into it. My name, deep, deliberate, exact. I approached slowly. Air metallic, damp, alive, pressing against my skin. The hum of the fluorescent lights vibrated softly in the chest. Fog pressed against the edges of the windows, curling soft and deliberate. I sat. The chair creaked softly beneath me. The empty figures remained still, watching nothing, yet somehow aware. Time stretched impossibly. Minutes became hours. Hours folded into the stillness. Every blink carried awareness. Every heartbeat echoed against the walls. I realized slowly, the rest stop was not a place to leave. It was a place to arrive, a place to become part of the silence. Patient, observant, still. The fog outside thinned slightly with the coming dawn. Light pressed softly against the edges of the windows. Shadows curled along the figures, patient, deliberate, impossible to ignore. I felt the chair beneath me grow warmer, soft, alive. The hum of the lights pulsed gently in rhythm with my heartbeat. Every breath, every movement measured and recorded. I glanced at the figures again. Unblinking, still patient. The air smelled metallic and damp, alive. And I understood. Some journeys do not end on the road. They end here, in observation, in stillness. In silence, I leaned back. The chair embraced me softly. The fog pressed against the windows. The figures remained, watching nothing, yet aware, patient. Every heartbeat echoed in time with the hum of the lights. Every breath pressed against the damp air. Every blink carried the memory of endless miles, endless fog, endless motion. I closed my eyes, softly, patiently. The rest stop embraced me, and I became part of the stillness, alone, yet not, observed, measured, accepted. The dawn pressed gently against the fog. The highway stretched empty outside. The hum of the lights pressed softly in the chest. Every mile I had traveled, every blink, every heartbeat, led here, and I understood at last, some roads do not lead forward. They lead inward, to acceptance, to silence, to the patient, unblinking observation of eternity.